Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. If this is your first time tuning in, you're probably already gone. But if you're still here, my name is Michelle, and who's here with me?
My name is JD. That was fantastic, Michelle. Well done.
I was channeling my Price is Right energy. Come on down. How much is this
your
fridge
big old
worth?
Roddy voice. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's, okay, well, that's our episode. Bye.
Yeah, have a good one, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Anyway, so here at We Watch Shudder, we watch Shudder. If you're not familiar with Shudder, it's a horror and horror adjacent streaming service with all sorts of movies and shows. And JD and I are fans of it and fans of horror in general. So we started this podcast so that we could talk about horror and record our conversations and see if anybody else gets a little kick out of them, some good old jollies from listening to us. Yeah.
Shudder puts out a whole bunch of original and exclusive stuff, just stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And that's what we talk about here. We talk about those originals and exclusives. We're talking about one of them today that came out way back early in the year as we're catching up on the last few titles. We just got this one and one more. And then, of course, we have the two new movies still to come, and we've done every original and exclusive Shudder release for 2022. Give us a big round of applause, everybody.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're applauding. Thanks. I appreciate it. You guys are great.
My price will be 1 cent, Bob.
One?
You
mean $1?
No, just 1 cent.
You can't.
How does...
Never
mind. Been a while. Anyway.
You can't bid cents. It's to the nearest dollar.
Well, I don't have any common sense, so I have to bid 1 cent. Anyway, hi.
Well, if they weren't gone yet, they're gone now. Sweet.
Yep, I'm really good alienating people. We love aliens, like horror. Back on topic. How does it make you feel, JD, to know that we have done like 60 episodes on 2022 releases plus a couple more during Spooktober?
We have recorded a lot of shit this year. I was actually going back through when we did the transition from Spreaker to Podbean, and just sort of looking, and I was like, man, we watched a lot of movies.
We watched a lot of Shudder.
Right. I mean, that's not a problem, right? That was the whole gimmick of the show. But look, I got to be honest, when I first pitched this idea to you, I kind of figured I would give it about 3 months and then I would get bored with it and probably just be like, hey, man, this isn't doing it for me anymore, Michelle. And yet here we are having a blast in December. What are we talking about today, Michelle? Which one is this movie that we're talking about today?
We are talking about All the Moons.
All the Moons, directed by Igor Legarreta. This is a Basque film. If you're not familiar with the Basque people, well, I'm not your Google, I'm not your Wikipedia, you figure it out. But, usually for the longest time we would read you the description of the movie from the Shudder website, but lately we've been rethinking that model because, as it turns out, just like this description, some of them are all just chock full of spoilers, and this one is also frickin' novel length. It's like 80 million words, so we're not going to read this one, are we, Michelle?
No, we're not. It's basically the entire plot of the movie.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, this is what you're about to see. I hope you don't care that we just told you every major plot development. Look, here's what this movie, All the Moons, we talk about Shudder all the time as being a service for horror and horror-adjacent films and shows. This, I think, definitely falls into that horror-adjacent area. It uses a lot of horror tropes and elements, but much like other films, movies I can think of, it was weird. I was actually just talking about these types of movies maybe a week or so ago on Twitter. Much like We're All Going to the World's Fair or Lake Mungo, this movie is very somber. It's very melancholy. Is a good way to describe it. It is a movie about life and death. It is a movie about parents and children. It has a lot of layers and a lot of stuff going on, but there's no real way to tell you what those are without giving away too much about the movie. So that's what we're going to tell you. It's a very it's a historical film. Takes place in the 19th century. They give you that title card right at the beginning of the movie telling you the specific year. I think it was 1838. I don't remember. But there's just no real way to talk about this movie without giving away too much. So that's what you're in for. A very morose, somber film. Uses a lot of horror elements to talk about a whole lot of things about life. Do you think that's fair, Michelle?
I think that's a much better description than anything that we've read on like during the length of this podcast ever. So that was great. You sold me on wanting to see this movie.
Awesome. But thankfully you did already see it, right?
What?
Oh God, here we go. So let's. Why don't we just give these folks our scores, our overall impressions of the film, and then we'll just get into the spoilery details. Michelle, how did you feel about this movie?
4.5.
Oh, you're just literally the score, not even just some general vague comments. 4.5.
There's nothing else I can say that you didn't already say. So
right.
4.5.
Awesome.
You covered
4.5. Well,
Yep.
I'm right there with you, and then a little bit more. This is a 5-skull movie for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So 4.75 average. And
Yeah.
I really want to get into the spoiler section so we can actually talk about what this movie is.
Yeah, guys, and if that's not enough to convince you, this is one that you probably want to go see before we dissect it. Nothing is. So some of you have already gone to start watching this movie. You're like, holy shit, 4.5 and a 5. That's a 4.75 skull movie. I don't need to waste time with these people anymore. I'm just going to go watch this movie. But if you don't want any spoilers, you're going to want to hit that pause button and go watch the movie right about meow. All right, Michelle. All the Moons. I talked for a little while about this movie vaguely. Now that we're in the spoilers section, why don't you tell people a little bit more specifically what this movie is about and hit us with some of your thoughts and what you loved about this movie?
Yes, absolutely. So the little girl in this, is her name Candido?
No, Candido is the man who finds her after, in sort of the middle section of the film. He names her Amaya. Yeah, Amaya. He names her Amaya when he meets her, but she doesn't have a name until that point.
Okay, thank you. The cast is not in any sort of order of importance, and I didn't really see names in the description, so I was just trying to figure out what we call her. Okay.
Yeah, the actress is Isaiah Carneros, I think is how you pronounce that name. She played Amaya, yes.
Yes. Okay. So this movie, for all intents and purposes, we will just say it's about a little girl named/called Amaya, because she is nameless at the beginning, but she, her orphanage, I believe, gets bombed at the very beginning, and then she meets a mysterious woman who decides to give her a gift, and that gift is immortality. This is a vampire movie. It's a historical vampire movie. I don't like vampire movies. I will finally admit it. They are like my least favorite of the horror genre. They just don't click with me. I'm not a history person, so I think that's a big factor in it. They're usually like set in older days, and I'm just kind of dumb when it comes to anything that happened before like 1997. No idea. But this one drew me in. Oh, and it's also, like you said, so slow and somber and beautiful and atmospheric. And there's long moments in this film that have no dialogue, just sound to carry it. So that's not a thing that I usually like either, because I'm a very high energy person. I need a movie to really rope me in. This broke through like all my things that normally would make me not like it, and it got to me. I watched it last week, so I had a little bit more time to marinate on it, and I cannot stop thinking about that ending. It has been really one of those that I keep coming back to. So I think this is it's just a really beautiful film, even
really
if
is.
I would normally consider it boring, and I can't.
Right. No, I'm right with you on that one. Like, I know people, obviously, if you've been paying attention for a while here with We Watch Shudder, I do often complain about movies having a slow pace and dragging and taking too much time and being too long. But most of the time, I feel like that's because the pace doesn't match the tone, right? It gets drawn out and long and dull in a movie that overall has a tone that's not supposed to be heavy and slow. This movie, the pace in which it plays out matches the tone and the emotion of the movie perfectly. You mentioned that there are so many points in this movie where there is no. I imagine the actual script for this movie, even though the movie is an hour and 40 minutes long, I would be shocked if the script is more than 60 or 70 pages. Like, it's very very sparse dialogue. One of my favorite sequences is that whole thing in the cave after her mother initially gets shot and falls over that cliff, and did she die? Is she just gone? Did they get separated? Like, that sequence when she's in the cave just drawing suns and moons on the walls of the cave and not saying anything and teaching herself to resist the sunlight and just discovering the fact that she is gradually learning to resist that sunlight or being able to. That whole sequence tells you as an audience member so much without a single word being spoken. And it's so well done. It's beautifully shot. Isaiah Carneros, I don't know how old she is in reality, but this character is what, maybe 10, 12 years old at best. And she is just riveting. It is a powerful performance. It's a beautiful film from a cinematography standpoint. It's gorgeous. There's that theme in the music that I don't think I will ever be able to get out of my head. That it's like, I don't know. I'm terrible. I didn't practice, but anyway, it's This is look. Let me just get real personal with you guys. I first watched this movie because this movie is very much about life and death, right? This movie very much looks at the vampire concept in some very interesting ways. First of all, that the whole mothering element and how she doomed this person to eternity as a child out of her own. Yes, it was selfish, but also it's like a forgivable selfish, right? It's an understandable selfish. She was a broken woman for God knows how long as a vampire herself, and she had an opportunity to get her child back, right? Yeah, it may have been the worst, like the most wrong, terrible decision, but it's also one of the most understandable. And just the way then that she also develops that relationship with Candido, who also lost a child, and just the weight that has to put on you as filling that gap for somebody else. It's so heavy, and it's so much about how like life doesn't have any value if it doesn't stop, right? If you never die, you were never really alive, is sort of what this movie says. And so the first time I watched this movie was I think a little over a month ago. We were getting ready to start recording these episodes. And I just watched it again literally today, just before we started recording the movie. And not to get too wild with you guys, I'm not going to get into too many details, but I'm going through some real heavy shit with my mom right now. And I have to believe that informed my experience of this movie the second time, but watching it through the second time, I feel bad calling this a horror movie this is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. It's so for a vampire movie, it's so incredibly human. And there's so much, like, even the churchgoers, right, in that small village after Candido finds her, like, how would you react in the 19th century if all of a sudden a little girl comes out of the woods and she's cutting her arm open and not bleeding and she pukes when she eats the Eucharist and all you've known is European Christianity your whole life? You would be fucking terrified, right? I don't know, I was overwhelmed by, there are so many layers in this. It's also like a commentary on war, allowing certain things to thrive. I mean, that's basically what they say with those lights, right? At the beginning, she's like, we follow the lights wherever they go. That is the flames of war. This is an incredible script. It's an incredible piece of writing on a number of levels. It's an incredible production. I can't say for sure yet. This might be my favorite movie I've seen from Shudder all year. I really love this movie. I really love this movie a lot.
Then Fried Berry?
Oh, gee, get the fuck out of here.
Love Fried Berry. I was getting lost in the sauce and just listening to you talk about this movie.
Sorry, I mean, I didn't mean to.
No.
I always say I don't mean to go off, but yeah, this movie.
No,
just,
you do.
I found I do. I really do. That's why we started the podcast in the first place,
course,
is I wanted an
course.
excuse to get away with ranting. But no,
Yeah.
this. And again, I freely admit that the emotional resonance of it is just very timely for me personally right now. But God, this movie is so good. I loved everything about it. I can't think of a single complaint about this movie.
You're making me feel bad for giving it a 4.5 because I don't think I can think of.
Well, I mean,
but I can't think of any complaints either.
Right. Well, but again, I mean, like I said, I happen to be going through some heavy stuff personally right now. That's very, life and death and parent-child related all at the same time. So I definitely. Because as we always talk about, our scores are we can't divorce our scores completely from our taste. Right, and our scores ultimately are about, yes, they're about what we think the quality of the movie is, but they're also about our experience with the movie. And for me, that it's that extra bit that makes this just a home run. I look forward to watching this movie and suggesting this. This is one of those movies where as soon as I got done with it, I was like, there are half a dozen people that I need to tell about this movie right now. It's so good.
And they'll get to hear all about it in an hour and a half when this episode drops.
Yeah, they will.
Isaiah is just, I don't have words for it because I'm going to assume the actress, Isaiah Carneros, is somewhere around the age of 10 to 12. But she plays a character of a 100-year-old woman trapped in a child's body so well that it's just I can't understand like what exactly she did differently when it's fast forwarded into the future and Candido is passing away and she's by his side. Even though she looks the same, she looks so different.
She feels older. Like, it's the old. You feel her age, which is how this was an incredibly nuanced performance from an incredibly talented performer. I'm just checking her out on IMDb right now, and it looks like there's only one other credit on her roster here. But God, I hope we see more from her. This was phenomenal work. Also trying to find some information about her age, and I can't find it.
I do have a concern that she actually is a child vampire, and that's why this is the only movie that we are really seeing her in, because I don't understand how else she did it. There's a wisdom in the way that she's speaking, and it just, I can't even say like, oh, well, she spoke more like this, and that's what caused this. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it really at all, except that it was just... I was riveted the entire time. It was phenomenal. and just again a beautifully shot movie. Like you could just look at this movie, which is part of what makes those extended sequences of no dialogue so captivating, right? Is it's beautifully done. There are a couple of montage moments here that are really, really good. I also, something I thought of while I was watching this movie is it reminded me a certain amount simply because it is it's a Basque film and it deals a lot with like the Spanish Carlist Wars and the Spanish Civil War and all of that sort of stuff as we pass through the ages. It like ultimately what I would say to people if they were people who don't mind just a tish of spoiler in your summary is like, this is the closest thing to me to what if Guillermo del Toro made a vampire movie, right? I feel like this movie would fit perfectly alongside like his Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth, all movies that certainly incorporate horrific elements but have more of a fantasy, a dark fantasy kind of vibe than a straight horror sort of thing. But also, you know, they're not necessarily about the political climate in which they are set, but don't kid yourself, they're set during that political climate for a reason. I feel like there's probably at least a little bit of Basque cultural influence going on here that I maybe don't even fully understand, but even it translates so well that I feel like I got all the most important parts out of it. I really, really, really love this movie. I'm so glad we got a chance to come back around and tell people about it. This one's definitely going to be high on my list for the year.
Since we're in the spoiler section, I'm just going to talk about the ending because
I
can't
go
stop
ahead.
thinking about it. And days after watching this movie, I just went back and rewatched it so that I could type out part of her speech and keep coming back to it about when she kind of confronts the woman who turned her into this vampire. And I'm just going to read it because I can't get this out of my head. So it's won't you return what you took from me? Death, you took it away from me and left me lifeless. I don't want to see all the moons. I want to live. I don't want to be with you. You were selfish. You knew you were dooming me and you didn't care. I'm trapped. See? And like that, oh my God, it's so heavy. Like she thought she was giving a gift and instead she took one away.
Yeah. And I mean, look, it doesn't take a genius to sort out that, like, how many times how much of a parallel is that to just, like, I wish I had not been born, right? Like, you did this to me. Like, this is your fault that I'm experiencing all of this because of a choice that you made. But also, that scene is very poignant, I think, also in the fact that, and it is part of what makes even the mother a sympathetic character, is she does, like, she never stopped to consider it. You're right. The kid is right. She never stopped to think about it because she was so consumed by her own loss and her own pain that she never thought to consider what fixing her issue might do for somebody else. And she recognizes that and she fixes it, right? She says, she's like, also I think a small part of it is her understanding, you know, there's so much in that moment about that idea that if you'd never die, you were never really alive. And so, yes, the mother is killing herself to release her child, so to speak, from that burden and give her back her life, which is, side note, an interesting element of some vampire lore that I love. That idea that you can heal the entire line by destroying the root, right? I love that part, and it doesn't always get touched in some of that some vampire things. But also just loved the idea that, like, oh yeah, the sun hurts them, but you can get used to it, right? You can adapt. They're just little things this does. The idea that you can only make one. you can make another one, but you can only ever make one. It did so many interesting things with that. But
you mentioned that cave sequence at the beginning, and that's it drew me in fully, and I stopped everything I was doing because I had to pay attention. And that part of this little girl teaching her body how to not burn in the sun was so smart, and shows this character is very wise. And I think that's why later on, when she's been alive forever, that she is so wise, because she was wise to begin with. And but at the same time, you don't realize that she's also dooming herself by doing that, because now she's just
now I can be part of both worlds. And now I'll get that taste of what's been taken from me. It's so heavy on a number of levels, and so deftly handled in every way as well. I loved this. I again, as a production, it's beautifully shot. The music is amazing. The editing, everything about it. It's such a great film, and I hope more people get a chance to see it. I know this Igor Legarreta, I think, has done at least one other feature before this that I'm definitely gonna take some time to try and locate and see if I can get that watched. I don't know if it's a horror film or not, but I can't recommend All the Moons highly enough. I strongly suggest that everybody go see this film. It's not frightening in any way at all. There is a little bit of blood and some, it's a vampire movie, right? But there's nothing about this that I think, like, this is easier to watch than Silence of the Lambs, right? And Silence of the Lambs just has a couple of really aggressive sequences that get kind of crazy. Otherwise, it's just really thrillery. This is so good. Go see it as soon as you can.
It never tries to be scary.
No, it has no intention.
And I think that's a big factor. So when there is blood, it's not for like a horror element. It's because it's necessary.
Right.
It's not done to cause any emotions. It's just a fact of life in this.
Yeah.
A lot of my notes were just like stupid one-line jokes. So I'm glad that you just got to talk, because I really liked it, but it kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of my own thoughts about immortality, and if that was given and if that was taken away. And it's just one that I keep coming back to a week later, and I really like a movie that just makes me think, even if I can't express those thoughts to anybody else because I sound insane trying to explain to anyone. So then I just talk to my cats, and I'm telling them, like, Beans, you won't believe this. Okay, so here's my thoughts on immortality, and if you are immortal, are you ever really even alive, or is life taken from you when it's given to you? And Beans, he pretends to care, but I know he doesn't. So, this one's
one last thing that I wanted to mention that just popped into my head here. I was thinking about her, like, that speech, that monologue at the end of the film that you shared with the folks. That's really incredible. There's also one other line, two moments actually in the dialogue that I thought were so incredibly well done here. One of them is that both the mother and Candido both promise her that they will always be with her. And they both break that promise because of course they did. Right? Like, Candido, of course he did, because he's a mortal man, and eventually he's going to die. And the mother, maybe not quite so inevitably, but she lost the first person who told her that. She lost the next person who told her that. That's some heavy shit. But there is that line right in the movie when Candido says to her, "I will always be with you," as they're leaving to get away from this village. And as he turns to burn the house down, she says, "Always is too much time." And that fucking line almost broke me. Like, that is so powerful. Always is too much time. I think that resonates with so many things in human life in general, especially in so many different human relationships. We insist on always, and always is always too much. I thought that was a fabulous piece of writing.
Especially if you're trapped in a place at the end of the world and you're in your favorite bookstore and your glasses break and now you can never read your books.
Or
Always
you're
is too
in a
long.
bomb shelter full of all the canned food in the world and you don't have a can opener.
I would eat the cans. I love aluminum. Good source of iron.
Oh, I see what you did there. So,
But it's
yeah, guys, I think that pretty well encapsulates all the moons. I definitely hope some of you plan to go check it out if you didn't check it out before we told you literally everything that happens. I do think you'll still be able to take quite a bit of value from this film. It's like I said, it's one that I am going to take a lot of joy in sharing with a lot of people going forward. And I'm kind of cranky with myself that I waited this long to see it.
Our episodes lately have been a roller coaster, where we just, except it's not a roller coaster because a roller coaster is on a circular track where eventually that car gets back to the beginning. We are a roller coaster that just stops at a random point on the ride and you're like, how did we wind up here? We went from Price is Right to sad lamentations about life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey, at least it's not Death Stranding.
I love Death Stranding. That's
I know
also
you love
about
Death
life
Stranding.
and death. Life
Right.
Stranding, Death Stranding.
Life Stranding. Let's make that video game, huh? That'll be our anyway. Guys, so coming up later this week, we
Please
have
don't say
our
that.
next new release episode, Michelle. Oh, what is it?
It's Scare Package 2, which I'm excited about, but it's also wrestling night. So
It
we're gonna have to do a full work day and then somehow figure out how to watch this movie before we get over to the Sanctuary Event Center.
Yeah, well, here's the good thing, though, is
Oh.
I don't work on Friday. We got a 4-day holiday weekend coming up.
I took Friday off too because I
nice.
was like, you know what? Because I
Nice.
have the following week off. So I'm like, I'm just going to start it early and the end of my work week will be wrestling.
Yeah, Thursday's going to be a busy one for us, guys. We got
Wish
Scare
us luck.
Package 2, Rad Chad's Revenge dropping on Shudder. We've got Time Bomb Pro Wrestling here in Fargo at the Sanctuary Event Center, where Michelle and I will be live on hand once again for that event. And then next Monday, we have our final bonus episode where we'll be talking about a film called The Seed. And then next Thursday or Friday, I don't remember quite which one, there will be a movie called Burial. And then that's fucking 2022, Michelle.
And then the world will end because we ran out of 2022 movies to watch.
There's no,
That's
if it's
how it
not
works.
2022 anymore, what's the point in continuing, right?
What was the point of continuing if you never had an opportunity to end? I was trying to do like an immortality thing, but
Right,
I
fair.
broke my own brain
Make-
trying to make words do
Make
the
sure
things
to.
I wanted them to.
I don't know what Michelle's trying to say right now. I'm just going to talk over
I
her
don't
like I
either.
clearly always
No,
do.
it's cool. It's cool.
Make sure you check us out on all the social medias. We're on Facebook at We Watch Shudder. We're on Instagram at We Watch Shudder. We're on TikTok at We Watch Shudder. We are, at least as of right now, still on Twitter at We Watch Shudder, but apparently Twitter announced today that if you use your Twitter to promote your other social media platforms, they will suspend and or ban you. I don't know what that nightmare hellscape has become in the last several weeks, but
I was a huge fan of Twitter. I didn't use it very often, but I lurked. And I am, despite that, I'm just loving watching this happen.
Oh,
just
it's,
every day there's more. And I'm just like, regardless of how you feel about Elon Musk, this is not a good move for the company.
It's hilarious.
And
Yeah,
I'm loving watching it.
I just love watching the hilarious idiotic meltdown of a billionaire man-child in real time, right? Like he would shit talk Apple, and his tweets where he's shit talking Apple are clearly tagged as being tweeted from an iPhone, and somebody pointed it out, and so they removed the feature on Twitter that tells you what device the tweet was tweeted from. He sent out a poll asking about a bunch of people he had banned, said, what should I do with them? There were 4 options, and the one that was far and away the victor in the Twitter poll was reinstate them all immediately. And he said, there were too many options on the poll. We'll have to change it and do it again. Like, he's reading. This is not a Twitter podcast, you guys. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.